Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you're going to meet a brilliant business mind. She's a business strategist. She's a keynote speaker. She's my friend. The great Krista Stepney is in the studio, and she's going to talk to all of us about how to get unstuck next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, the late, great Zig Ziglar used to talk about it's stinking thinking. It's, we have this powerful computer in our mind, but so often we're playing the wrong tapes for ourselves. We're listening to the wrong advice. Sometimes we're criticizing ourselves so much that we don't even like ourselves. So how do you get unstuck? Well, you invite somebody into your life, like my next guest, Krista Stepney is in the studio. She's a business strategist, keynote speaker, and my friend. Thanks for coming on the show.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm honored. And you were telling me before the show that you actually started speaking when you were a child.
Correct. So probably about 8 years old, I started doing oratorical contests.
Nice.
We thought it would be fun to just, for competition and contests, to get a little spending money, enroll in these contests. And so throughout our city, we would actually enroll and have a contest where we could speak. And I often won a couple of first place awards.
No kidding.
And so imagine how cool that was to talk about back at school.
Well, especially as a child, because, the number one fear in America is fear of public speaking. The number 2 fear is death. So as a child, were you not nervous?
I was nervous, but I realized that I wanted to inspire audiences. And when I could see people lighting up because of something that I said, it was something that was just kismet and allowed me to really step into that gift. And so I tell people often, I never have met a stranger. I could talk to a brick wall. And so even at an early age, I was just charismatic enough to share my story in that meaningful way.
I love that. Tell me about your professional career. So what are some different hats that you've worn?
Oh, my goodness. So in my corporate background, I've been a healthcare business strategist and operational leader for the majority of my career, almost 2 decades. And I've had the pleasure of working with several different healthcare organizations, mainly in the delivery space, thinking about strategy transformation, workplace culture, and just overall organizational transformation. That's been the crux of my career, and being able to work with C-suite leaders, boards of directors, and thinking about how to move healthcare forward. Most recently in my healthcare background, I worked with leaders around community health and thinking about equitable care outcomes within their communities. But that's just my corporate background. I've always had a foot in entrepreneurship as well. Everything from owning my own event planning company to owning an event center with a business partner to actually starting businesses and scaling and selling them. And today, in my role as a keynote speaker and business strategist, really helping people, as what you just mentioned, to get unstuck, to think about how that transformation leads to them seeing some of the impact that they want to have in this world.
Outstanding. We're going to pull up your website because it's a beautifully made website. I want you to talk about the kinds of audiences that you like to speak to.
Certainly. So, of course, being in a corporate background for the majority of my career, that's still the best place that I enjoy speaking. There's so much that's happening, and especially in a time where there's so much uncertainty, corporations are thinking about what does this have on an impact in workplace culture? How do we think about making sure that we still hit our bottom line or big lofty goals, knowing that there could be scarcity of resources or employee morale being impacted? So those are still the audiences that I like to lean into and talk about. How do you get unstuck? How do you keep people moving forward, even in times like today? And then, of course, audiences around women's development and professionalism and just advancement. So many stories that I have during my time as an executive that I want to encourage other women to think about their advancement by tapping into their unique gifts and talents as well.
And you're working on a book that will be released very soon.
Yeah.
Tell us about the book.
I'm so excited, Jeff. The book is called Move Anyway. It's a guide for overthinkers, perfectionists, and almost starters. And it's not because I wrote the book because I have all the answers, but it's coming from a real place of knowing what it feels like to be stuck, to be paralyzed from overthinking and kind of waiting for that perfect moment, perfect timing, but recognizing that doesn't come and that I wasn't alone in that journey. So I wrote this book to, one, talk about the neuroscience of what's happening in our brain that keeps us stuck, but how we can train it in a different way to actually start to see momentum and to progress forward. It's filled with different strategies and tools that I actually use with some of my clients during my consulting days, and some of the work that I even do in my coaching space to help people have practical, everyday strategies to move forward. So I'm excited for people to have an actual guidebook and a roadmap of how they can actually get out of their own way and start to see some forward momentum.
Outstanding. As I mentioned, she's a brilliant keynote speaker. We're going to show a clip from one of her recent speeches. Let's go ahead and roll that now.
Imagine this. It's May 5th, 1961. And what was probably a regular Tuesday for many Americans was actually a pivotal moment for a joint session of Congress, because President John F. Kennedy was giving a declaration stating that by the end of the decade, America would land a man on the moon. Now, at this time, NASA didn't have the technology or even the blueprint to make such a declaration possible. But I'll paraphrase that President Kennedy was actually asking a bold question. What if we could do something different? What if we could land a man on the moon? President Kennedy's imagination in that what if moment led to one of the largest technological leaps that our country has ever seen. And we're still experiencing that today in how we think about space exploration. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would garner to say that healthcare is also at a what if moment. What if we could reimagine how to provide equitable, consumer-centric care and really drive towards transformation? What if imagination became the spark that changed everything that we did?
And I love your speaking style. You, in the speaking world, they call it owning the stage, and that's where you truly come alive.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. You also, I like to say, give away the gold. So obviously, you could hire her to be your keynote speaker, or you could hire her to do some consulting with your C-suite. But you give away so much gold on social media, and you have all these tip videos. And so here's one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Okay, today we're diving in deep. Let's really address the question about why you're not making that bold move. It could be something besides a fear of failure. I want you to really unpack where that place of resistance is coming from. Could it be that it's really a fear of success? A fear of recognizing that when you actually take those small steps and start to see change, that you might be battling imposter syndrome on if you're really ready to step into the change that you see? Or maybe there's resistance around the fact that you don't think that you're enough, that you don't think that you have what it takes. Or maybe that what you have is too much and may not be welcomed and accepted by others. Whatever the path of resistance, it's holding you back. And it's easier to say, well, I don't want to fail, but you know deep down that it's more than that. Here's what I encourage you to do. Have a mindset shift. Address those areas of resistance and identify how to unpack each one so that we can shift your mindset. It could be too much or just enough to help inspire someone else to make a big change as well. You may realize that the path ahead is daunting and scary, but you have what it takes internally to actually start to see progress and forward momentum. Instead of just focusing on fear of failure, really address what's holding you back, and then start to journal ways that you can unpack how to move past that doubt and that fear. If there's something that you heard today that resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with a friend, to like this video, and to click the notification bell so that you can hear more tips about bold leadership in the future.
Absolutely brilliant. And I know you spend a lot of time talking about perfectionism. So, and you confessed to me before the show that you have a little bit of that yourself. So how do you keep perfectionism from holding you back?
You know, Jeff, it's so interesting that you bring that up. There was a recent study that said over 70% of adults would not share their ideas, not because they're afraid of the reality of it, but because they're afraid that it's not perfect, that they don't have the right moment for it. And what that study was trying to help us to unpack is perfectionism keeps us in this cycle of overdoing, polishing, preparing, and planning. And we think that's moving, but it's not moving forward. It's something that I like to call productive procrastination. And we're in this cycle of polishing something when really, even if you start messy, you're starting and you're giving you a chance to actually start with some action. You might tweak it down the road.
Right.
You might evolve it, but you've actually launched it and put it out there. That's when clarity and confidence begin to show up because you have an opportunity to evolve something that you've already created. And so for me, perfectionism is something that I've struggled with for many, many years. As a type A, firstborn leader, I have often found myself wanting to make sure that it was ready for prime time, especially if I was going to put out something that was so special and dear to me. But there's never going to be a right moment. And you've got to launch it because that's the opportunity where you start to see the magic happen. You can imagine more. You can push past the status quo and recognize that that gives you more courage the next time you want to start again.
Well, and I love it that you wrote a book dealing with something that you've struggled with your entire life. Was it cathartic to write the book and kind of read your own words and say, yeah, I need to take my own advice?
Yes, it was, but it was also so exciting to see the evolution of my journey. I think about some of the stories that I shared when I first stepped into my C-suite role. I think about some of the stories that I shared from some of the work that I've done with some of the leaders and the organizations that I've helped. But to see where I am now or where those leaders are now,
Yes.
it's been encouraging to see that not only do the strategies work because they work then, but they're still applicable and they're still very relevant to what I'm seeing is needed in the world today.
Yes. We were talking before the show about in everybody's car, there's a gas and a brake. And so many of us ride with one foot on the brake just in case. Just in case we need to stop. So what's your words of encouragement for the person who recognizes they're watching this? They recognize that they have been riding with one foot on the brake. You don't want to dismantle the brake and have no brake at all. But how do you speed up? How do you move anyway and use more gas than you do brake?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jeff. I think there is something to be said about caution. And I recognize that our brain teaches us to address fear or uncertainty in a way that keeps us safe. But even if you take 2 small steps or 2 extra pumps on the gas and not the brake, you start to change your position. When you change your position, that means you change your viewpoint, your perspective. You start to see things differently. It awakens a different level of imagination in you that allows you to innovate and create differently. So for someone who's kind of more apt to put their foot on the brake, that means you're not changing the world around you. And I don't know about you, but staying stuck in the world that we just see today isn't as rewarding as seeing what's beyond and what could be. So it doesn't matter how many times you start out or how many times you push the brake a little bit harder than the gas, you can always start over. And think about 2 small moves, what I like to call micro boldness, that can actually change your position and change your perspective to keep moving forward.
Outstanding. We're almost out of time. So Krista, talk to that person who's been living in fear and give them some words of encouragement.
Appreciate that, Jeff. My words of encouragement is it doesn't matter how many times you've been here, stuck, or waiting to get started. You have an opportunity to decide to start today to move forward. Write down 2 small actions that you can take today. It doesn't have to be a lofty, big leap, but 2 small things that you can do. Maybe tell a friend so they can be your accountability partner and decide to start today. I encourage you to change your position. It will change not only where you are in life, but the world that you see around you.
Outstanding. Dare I say that was perfect. You did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to end with her website, which is KristaStepney.com. The great Krista Stepney. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.